Crank it again. If our ignition system is working, we should have a spark jumping the gap between the spark tester. I'm gonna go home and relax on my couch. Guys, I have a favor to ask you guys. You see all these cars we have here parked here? First of all, I want to thank you all for bringing business to us. And I also want you guys to help us find a bigger shop. So if you live in Maryland, specifically in the Frederick area, if you know a shop that's being leased or a shop that's for sale, please let us know. So I would like to ask help from you guys. So help us find a big shop, because the shop we have over here is becoming too small. So we need your help to find a new shop. Help us, please. Now, behind the camera, I have cameraman Kyler. Kyler, thanks for being here. Let's walk to this vehicle here, because we no longer have room in the shop. We're gonna have to fix some cars outside. So although it's hot outside, I don't like working outside. We got bugs here. Kyle is making fun of me, but hey, you know, I love doing this, and I love fixing cars, and I love taking care of my customers. So we're gonna do it. Although it's hot, I'm sweaty, but hey, you know, we gotta keep moving. So we have a canopy set up here. So we're gonna work outside, and let's see how this is gonna go. Now, we have a 2005 Lexus LS 430. The customer complaint on this vehicle is the engine cranks, but it doesn't start. So this is a crank, no start condition. This vehicle was dropped off here by a tow truck. After they drop it off here, you know, it was raining outside. They dropped it yesterday. Was it yesterday, Kyler? They dropped it off yesterday. It was raining, so we can't move it. It doesn't run. So hopefully we can figure out why it's not starting. So the first thing we're gonna do is we're going to go in the vehicle and confirm the customer's complaint, and then we'll go from there. So I would like to give a shout out to the owner of this vehicle. Actually, it's my friend's daughter's car. So his name is Mr. Todd Morris. So Bishop Morris, if you watch this video, I want to give you a shout out, and I want to say hello to you. So now let's go in the vehicle and confirm the complaint. Kyler and I were talking about this vehicle off camera. Guys, look how clean this vehicle is. Wow, she keeps it really clean. Look at the back. This is one of the cleanest cars that we've ever received here at the shop. Right, Kyler? This car is clean. Wow, I like it. She does a good job. All right, so first thing we're gonna do, let's try to start the engine. Let's see. So right there, I hope you can hear the engine crank. So the engine cranks, but it doesn't start. Okay, one more time. All right, so that's customer's complaint confirmed. I'm going to turn the key on. The engine cranks, but it doesn't start. So now let's scan the engine computer and see what codes we have in the engine computer. Let's see if we have any codes. Now, I believe they did some things to this vehicle. The owner of this vehicle is very mechanically inclined, so he knows a lot about fixing cars. Let me read the text that he sent me. Some things were done to this vehicle. So here's what was done to this vehicle. He says, the car is on its way. Okay, this is when they were towing it here. 2005 LS 430, no codes, crank no start, fuse is visibly okay, 2 fuel pump relays, click okay, fuel pressure regulator is non-weakness, it's backed by under pump rear seat. Rear seat comes on out by pulling it straight up. Okay, so I guess he's just trying to like give me some pointers on how to get to the relays and stuff. Okay, thanks, Todd. All right, so now that's good to know, but we're gonna attack this just like we attack any other vehicle. Okay, when an engine cranks but doesn't start, it could be missing fuel, spark, or compression. Now, based on how the engine sounds, I don't think we have a compression issue. Listen to it one more time. So the way the engine sounds, the crank cadence sounds nice and consistent. So we can already rule out a possible mechanical issue with this engine. Now, this vehicle has 175,000 miles, 705. A lot of miles, but not too crazy for a Toyota. I mean, it's a Lexus. Hold on, this thing is beeping. Is it gonna stop? Okay. All right, so the scan tool has identified the vehicle. This is a 4.3 liter engine. Let's click OK. Let's do a code scan and see what we're gonna find. Now, we were told that there were no codes, so there, no codes in the engine computer. So what do you do when you scan an engine computer and there are no codes, but the engine doesn't start? What do you do, Kyler? Go home. Hey, I would go home. It's about to rain, so I'm gonna go home and relax on my couch. But if we do that, we're gonna have an angry customer. We need happy customers, not angry customers. They want to have their vehicle back. You know, she's got a rental car right now, so we gotta fix it so she can get her vehicle back. So let's wait until all the scan tool finishes scanning all these control units. Oh, I think it has a air suspension. There's like sport mode, normal. Oh, fancy. All right. No codes on all these control units. Wow, you guys will see this when Kyler puts this up. So let's go in the engine computer. Let me see if we have a fuel pressure data page, because since we don't have codes, like I said, when you have a crank no start, you check fuel delivery to the cylinders or to the injectors, and then you check spark, and then you go from there. Okay, so there isn't a specific way of going about this. We can start by checking fuel delivery or spark to the ignition coils. We got to make sure if the coils are working. So it doesn't matter what you decide to check first. So let's go to data. I don't know if there's a fuel pressure sensor on the rail on this one. Let's go to engine data. Let me just go through all these data pads. Do we have a fuel pressure data pad? No fuel pressure data pad. Okay, now we could go down all these data groups to see if there's a useful data pad here that we can look at. But now let's stay low tech first, okay? Let's go under the hood. I'm going to pop the hood. Let's go under the hood and do some basic checks and see what we're gonna find. So based on how the engine sounds, I'm gonna rule out a potential mechanical problem. I don't think this has a mechanical problem. Let's go under the hood. Let's check for spark first. If we have spark, then we're gonna check fuel delivery. So now let's go under the hood. All right, let's pop the hood. Oh, everything is covered here. All right, so what should we start with? I'm gonna start with whatever that's easiest to check. All right, I gotta remove this cover. The engine cover needs to come out. So, Lexus 4.3 liter engine, VVTi 3UZ-FE. Interesting. All right, so I need a 10 mil to remove these two nuts so we can take the engine cover off. I'm gonna grab some tools and then I'll be right back. All right, so let's remove this engine cover. Let's pop this off. Nice. So I'm gonna get the engine cover out of the way. Okay, so now this is our fuel supply line. Okay, this line supplies fuel to the fuel rails. So we have one rail on the driver's side, and then there's another one on the passenger side. So I'm looking on the rail to see if there's a service port on these rails, but it looks like there isn't. So what we're gonna have to do is we have to disconnect this line and tap into this line so we can see if we have fuel going to the fuel rail. Now, before we do that, since I said we're gonna stay low tech first, I would like to remove one ignition coil. We can remove this one here. I'm gonna disconnect the electrical connector, and then I'm gonna undo this bolt. Let me grab a ratchet. I'm gonna remove this bolt here. So we're gonna check for spark first. Oh, come on. I need a shorter socket. All right, so let's remove this coil bolt, this little 10 mil here. Kyler, you know, in a couple months from now, you'll be diagnosing these vehicles. You look at them and be like, oh, I know what's wrong. All right, so here comes the coil. Actually, Kyler was asking me earlier about this. You were like, what is this? Well, this is a spark tester. So I'm gonna connect it to the coil, okay? And then we're gonna connect the electrical connector of the coil back to the coil, and then we're gonna connect this to ground. So this intake manifold is grounded. So we're gonna connect this over here, okay? So the coil is connected to the spark tester. I'm gonna go in the vehicle and crank the engine. So as I crank the engine, Kyler, you're gonna focus on the spark tester. If our ignition system is working, we should have a spark jumping the gap between the spark tester. And that will tell us that there is spark to the engine, and that will also tell us that the coils are working. So I'm gonna crank it. Let's see if we have spark there. What do you think? You don't see anything? No spark?
I didn't see it.
Or is it too clear that you can't see it?
Wait, I can try cranking it. You can look.
Let me get a different spark tester. Dang, there's bugs. I couldn't find my other spark tester. We're gonna use a test light to test the coil. Let me check the test light first. So test light, our test light works. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna connect my test light to ground, okay? So I might have to hold the camera. Kyler, you're gonna go in the vehicle for me and crank it. I'm just gonna hold the spark plug, the coil. I'm gonna hold the test light over here. Okay, so we should have spark coming out of this coil. Okay, can you go in the car and crank it for me?
Yeah.
So we're gonna crank it one more time. Crank it. Crank it. As you can see, crank it one more time. All right. The battery is starting to get weak too, but there is no spark jumping out of the coil. Okay, there's no spark jumping out of the coil. Now, this is a 4-wire coil. We should have power and ground going to the coil, and then we should have control to the coil, and then we should have feedback going back to the engine computer. So here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna grab my lab scope, because at this point I don't want to check fuel pressure yet. I need to make sure that this coil is getting power and ground. So let's make sure that the coil is getting everything it needs for it to work, okay? So I'm gonna get my lab scope. I'm gonna get connected to the coil wiring, and then I'll bring you guys back up.
Let's go.
All right, so I got my scope test leads right there on the bench. Let's see if our Wi-Fi signal is strong enough out here. I'm gonna bring up our wiring here, engine performance wiring diagram. So you guys will see this. We don't have spark. If you don't have spark, your engine is not gonna start. So we need to figure out why we do not have spark. So the first thing I'm gonna do, I'm gonna check for power and ground at the coil. Let's make sure the coil is getting power and ground. And then we're gonna check the other two wires. So let's go to our engine performance. Dang, I hate working outside. If I say that already, jeez. I need to go get some bug spray. So I'm gonna find our ignition coils here on our wiring diagram. Okay, so we got coils here. Okay, so it looks like the coil ground is gonna be white and black. White and black. No. I'm sorry, it's not white and black. It's green and white. So green and white will be ground. So let me disconnect this coil. Come on. All right. Okay, can you see that right there? So green and white, it's gonna be this guy. So this is gonna be our ground wire. So I'm gonna back probe it. It's a constant ground. So we're gonna use our test light to test the ground. So I'm going to move my test light to power. Okay, so let's move our test light to battery positive. If we touch ground, test light is gonna light. Okay, we touch ground, test light lights. So since we're back probing the ground wire at the coil, if we touch it and our test light is connected to power, our test light should light. Test light is not lighting. Are we missing ground to the coil? Let me double check. That could be our problem. There's your problem. Ground, I mean, it says green and white and black. Huh. Am I checking the wrong wire? Maybe I'm checking the wrong wire. There's red. Yeah, so here. White and black. White and black. Actually, hold on. Let me highlight this wire because let me not get too excited here. So here is the ground. Ground. So all the wires that I'm highlighting are the ground wires. Yeah, so it says white and black. We don't have a white and black wire on this coil. We have brown, blue, green, and red. Is this the right wiring diagram? This wiring diagram is not correct. I mean, the wire colors don't match. This is why you don't trust aftermarket wiring diagrams. Okay, I believe in our case, ground will be the brown. Let me back probe this brown wire, because usually brown is ground. Let's see. There. Okay, so the wiring diagram is wrong. On my wiring diagram, you guys will see this. It says ground is white and black, but on the vehicle, ground is brown. So sometimes you have to look at OEM wiring diagram to figure this out. Now, our red wire should be our power wire. So this guy, this red, should be power. Okay, so I'm gonna back probe the red wire. Now we're gonna switch our test light to ground. Maybe let's connect it here. This should be ground. I'm gonna turn the key on. We should have power on this red wire. No power here. Interesting. Now let's get good ground from the battery, okay? Bernie Thompson always says, get your ground from the battery. Don't trust a bolt on the engine. Okay, so we have good ground there. So let's back probe here. We've got no power on this red wire. Oh, yeah. I wasn't making good connection, I guess. Okay, so we got power there. Now let me turn, come on. Let me turn the key off. We lose power when I turn the key off. I'm going to turn the key on. We do have power. Okay. All right. So we have good power and good ground at the coil. Now the question is, do we have control and feedback? So now I'm going to back probe all these wires. Now we're going to use our lab scope. Now I'm going to back probe all these wires. Now there is a possibility that this coil is defective, but my question would be, if that's your question, my question back to you would be, do you think all the coils will go bad at the same time? Okay. So the coil is getting good power and good ground, but it's not producing spark. Okay, it's not working. Is it getting control from the computer? That's what we need to find out. So I'm gonna connect all my test leads to the back probing tools here. Okay, now I need to get my back probes out of the way. Okay. So we're gonna ground this here. So right now I am back probing all the wires at the coil. Okay, can you see that, Kyler? So now, actually, I can bring this up like this. Because I still want my spark tester. I still want to connect my spark tester to it. Okay. So now we're gonna go to our lab scope. We're gonna use all our channels. Okay, very good. Okay, I'm gonna turn the key on. Key is on. So we have 5 volt on the yellow trace. Why only 5 volts? there we go. This is what I wanted to see. Okay, so we have 11.3 volt on the yellow trace, so that's our power supply wire to the coil, and then we have 5.01 volts on the blue trace, and then we have 0.02 volts on the green trace, and then 0.01 volt on the red trace. Very good. So now I'm going to crank the engine. I'm going to put this over here so I can also look at it as I'm cranking the engine. Oops. Oh, no. No. All right. Battery is getting weak. Let's see what we had. So, this is odd. What kind of control is this? Very odd. Okay, battery is getting weak. Let me get a jump box on the battery and then I'll bring you guys back up. All right, so we got a jump box connected to the battery. Let's take this capture one more time. Let me crank the engine. Let's stop this. Let me go back. Interesting. Now it looks like the control is there. Am I making good connection here? Something does not look right. Let me reinstall the coil back in the hole. Where's that little bolt that I had? Crank no stud. Very interesting. Very interesting. Kyler, any guesses? What do you think is wrong?
No.
No?
Imagining something to spark, right?
Yeah, because, there's no spark.
Yeah.
We should have spark. All right, so I'm still back probing all the wires at the coil. Okay, let's check this one more time. Let's stop this. So I'm looking at the blue trace. It looks like the blue trace is the... Wait a minute. Look at what we have here. No, what I want to see is... So on the control of the coil looks like a square wave. Okay, so that's the engine computer turning on the coil. And it looks like I see it on the green trace over here. Okay, so, is this a computer problem? because this coil is not being turned on. The coil is not being turned on. So after all the cranking we've done, so I want you guys to focus on the green trace. Look at the green trace. Let me separate these guys. Okay, so blue should be the feedback, and then green is the coil control, but it's not really consistent. We only have two. Okay. How should we go about this? So blue trace is green. Let me go back to my wiring diagram. So light green. Hold on. Let me look at my firing order. Let's see what cylinder is this. So first cylinder on the driver's side is okay. So first cylinder. Oh no, this is one's in the first cylinder. This is a second cylinder. So that is cylinder number 3. So this is a V8. For some reason, I thought it was a V6. It's a V8. So that is cylinder number 3. So let's find cylinder 3 on our wiring diagram. So cylinder 3 is this guy. So green and black. Yeah, so blue is connected to green and black. So green and black is this guy here. Also goes here. Then goes out here. Let's follow where green and black goes. Okay, green and black says IGF2. I believe that's ignition feedback 2. Okay, so that's ignition feedback. And then okay, so blue trace, which is connected to green and black, so that's ignition feedback. And then we know that brown is ground, red is power. And then the other one is, looks like blue. So blue and yellow, let me highlight that wire. That should be our ignition control. Let's follow it. Blue and yellow says IGT3. Blue and yellow. Blue and yellow is green. Okay, let's do this one more time. This time we're just gonna focus on the green trace. Let me turn off these other traces. Okay, so this is our ignition control. Let's see. So this is ignition control. Do we have some control here? Nothing. That doesn't look good. Bad news. This coil is not being controlled. Okay. No ignition control. No ignition control, guys. No ignition control. Let me crank it one more time. Ha, I don't like what I see. Let me see. Hold on. Let me put more time across the screen. No, I was wrong. I spoke too soon. The coil is being controlled. The coil is being controlled. Well, if it has power and ground and it's being controlled, why don't we have spark? All right. I don't want to waste too much time on this thing. Okay. One quick test we can do to see if the computer is good. Yeah, based on what I see here, the coil is being turned on. Let me turn on the other traces. Sorry guys if I'm going in circles here. I just want to make sure that we have everything that we need for this car to run. Let's crank this one more time. Okay, well, this is a lesson for me. You gotta learn how to use your tool. So I needed to put more time across the screen to see this. All right, yeah. So the coil is being controlled. There's power, there's ground. Why we couldn't see spark coming out of that coil? That's odd. Based on what I see on the scan tool, on the lab scope, we should have coil. Because the green trace, this little square wave you see over here, that's the computer turning on the coil. So now, let me check for injector pulse at the injector, okay? So I'm gonna disconnect all these test leads. Let's get these test leads out of the way. So based on what I saw on the lab scope, our coil is being turned on. Okay, so I don't know if Kyler can see this. Oh, actually, let's do it on this injector here. You see this injector connector? We have a black wire here, and this looks like a brown wire, black and brown, right? If I look at the other coils, all these, not coil, injectors. If I look at the other injectors, all these injectors have a black wire too. You see this one here? There's black and green on this connector. And then over here, there's black and blue. And back here, there's black and brown. So the one wire that looks identical to all the injector connectors, that's our power supply wire to the injectors. So I'm gonna back probe it. We have a test light here. Our test light is connected to ground. So I'm gonna attach my test light to the back probing tool. Okay, so right now the key is off. I'm gonna turn the key on. Let's see. If we have power going to the injectors, when I turn the key on, the test light should light. Okay, right there, test light lights. Perfect. So now I'm gonna move my back probing tool to the next wire of the injector connector, which is gonna be our injector control. Okay, as you can see, we also have power on the other wire. That's because power is going through the injector winding and coming back out here. Now, Ian, I see you standing back there. Can you disconnect the test light clamp? Yeah, connect it to power, battery power. Yeah, you got it connected there. All right, so we switched our test light to battery power. If we touch ground, test light is gonna light. Okay, see? test light lights. So now, since test light is connected to power, we're gonna connect our test light to the back probing tool that's connected to the control wire of the injector. Now I'm gonna crank the engine. If we have injector pulse at the injector, this test light should flicker. So the test light flickering means the engine computer is turning on the injector. So Kyler, let me know if the test light is gonna flicker. I'm gonna crank it. It should flicker on and off. Is it? Is it flickering? Okay. So if it's flickering on and off, that means the injector is being turned on by the engine computer. The injector is being turned on, although we didn't see spark. That lack of spark from that ignition coil is kind of throwing me off a little bit. So let's not get sidetracked. Now what I want to do is I'm going to shift gears a little bit. Let me get my scope out of the way. I said we were going to stay low tech first, but I kind of went away from that. Let me check for fuel delivery, okay? And then if we have fuel going to the fuel rail, then we're gonna go after that first. If we have fuel going to the rail, then we're gonna go back to figuring out why the ignition coil is not producing spark. I'm gonna get a fuel pressure gauge connected to this fuel supply line, and then I'll bring you guys back up. All right, so I have our fuel pressure gauge connected to the fuel line that supplies fuel to the fuel rail. Now, here's what I noticed. When I disconnected this fuel line, no fuel came out of this, and there was no pressure at all. So this is a problem. We have a couple adapters connected to this line. We have Ian in the vehicle. He's gonna crank the engine for us. I didn't look up the pressure spec, but I believe it has to be over 45 PSI, okay? So crank the engine for us. Okay, that's a problem. So our gauge didn't move, so we have no fuel pressure here. Actually, we have a little bit of a leak here. See, it's dripping. But we should have a lot of fuel coming out. Crank it more. Just a couple of drips. Crank it again. All right, cool. So no fuel going to the rail. Now, you guys might say, what about the no spark? I mean, based on what we saw earlier, there was no spark coming out of the coil. Now, we may have a couple issues going on right now, but I'm gonna go after the no fuel issue first, okay? Let me figure out why we don't have fuel going to the rail. We could have a bad fuel pump, we could have a bad fuel pump relay or a bad fuel pump fuse, or we could also have a bad crank sensor that's not telling the engine computer the engine speed, because the engine computer looks at the engine speed when you crank the engine for the engine computer to turn on the fuel pump. But if we had a bad crank sensor, we would have had a crank sensor code, right? Not all the time, so we'll see. Now, what I'm gonna do is I wanna get access to the fuel pump and do some tests at the fuel pump electrical connector. Let's see if the fuel pump is getting good power and good ground, and then we'll go from there. As you can see, we don't have fuel pressure, so let's go after that first. Hopefully we can get access to the fuel pump by lifting the back seat. Let's see. So let's go to the back of the vehicle and see what we're gonna find. So let's see if we can find where the fuel pump is located. Looks like it's not here. It might be over here. Okay, now the other way of doing this would be finding the fuel pump relay or the fuel pump fuse, checking that first, but I think it's pretty easy to get to the pump itself, so I want to get to the pump and do some tests at the pump. So it looks like this over here is the pump wiring. What the heck? How do you remove this thing? Oh my goodness. You have to take all this piece off. Interesting. Come on, Toyota. Usually they do their stuff. Toyota engineers really seem to have common sense, but I don't know what happened this time. So if you follow this connector, I think we're gonna have to remove this entire assembly. It looks like if I undo this bolt here, like this whole thing needs to come off. And I'm hoping that's the fuel pump cap over here, because I'm gonna have to get to the wires. Let me see, can I follow this thing over here? Where does this thing go? Yeah, here's the wiring. No. What about if I remove this little rubber grommet? Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's the fuel pump connector. Okay, I gotta remove this whole assembly. I'm gonna figure out how to remove this, and then I'll bring you guys back up. All right, so we're gonna remove this whole mechanism. I disconnected the wiring of it. I undid a couple bolts. So now it's ready to come out. Oh, actually. All right, that just looks like a drain. I'm gonna give this to Ian. So Ian, can you come grab this? Perfect. All right, so we got that out of the way. So here is our fuel pump access panel. We're gonna undo this guy. Kyler, I was gonna be so mad if we had to drop the fuel tank to get to the fuel pump. Usually Toyota engineers are very smart, so I was gonna be like, really, Toyota? What have you done? Okay, so ta-da! Here it is. So this is the fuel pump electrical connector. I'm gonna disconnect it. Okay. Typical Toyota fuel pump electrical connector. Now the heavy gauge wires will be the power wire and the ground wire of the fuel pump. So I'm going to undo the lead of this connector. If I remember correctly, I believe I'm gonna have to pry this up like that. Yeah, just like that, easy peasy, nice. So as you can see, we have access to these wires. So I'm gonna reconnect the connector right there, and then I need one more back probing tool, and then I also need one jumper wire. So I'll go grab the tools I need to test this, and then I'll be right back. Now, without even looking at the wiring diagram, I can tell that this white wire with a black tracer and this red wire are the wires that send power and ground to the fuel pump, okay? I'm gonna back probe these two wires, okay? One of them will be the ground wire, and then the other one will be the power wire. They're heavy gauge wires because they draw, or they carry a lot of current. Okay, so I got both of them back probed, and then we're gonna use our headlight bulb. We're gonna connect it to our back probing tools here. Okay, so now we are tapped into the fuel pump power circuit. Now we have Ian sitting on the driver's seat. He's gonna crank the engine for us. If the fuel pump is getting good power and good ground, this headlight bulb is gonna light. Go ahead, crank it. Okay, crank it again. Okay, crank it. Okay, so the light bulb is pretty bright. This tells me that we don't have excessive voltage drop across. We don't have excessive voltage drop on the fuel pump circuit. It's getting good power and good ground. You can see the light coming on. So what do you think is the problem, Ian? because there's power and ground going to the pump, but there's no fuel pressure. What's wrong? The fuel pump. Fuel pump is bad. Crank it one more time. Right there. Now I can go even a step further. I can disconnect this fuel supply line here. We're gonna have to change the fuel pump on this one. Now, if after cranking this, if we didn't have power and ground at the fuel pump, then we were gonna work our way back to the fuel pump relay and the fuel pump fuse. But at this point, there's no need to check our fuel pump relay and fuel pump fuse because there's power and ground coming to the fuel pump. Because since we have power and ground here, that means we have good power. I mean, since there's power and ground coming to the fuel pump, it means we have a good fuel pump relay and a good fuel pump fuse. Now, I disconnected the fuel pump supply. I mean, the fuel, looks like there's a lot of fuel in the tank. You know, I don't want to do this because this can be dangerous. We are connecting we are connecting a test light here, and then we have fuel leaking here. I don't want anything to blow up here because we can have these two test leads can touch each other, and I don't want to have a spark here and blow myself up. No, that was enough. I mean, that was enough evidence, right, Kyler? That was enough. I mean, this is going to need a fuel pump. We got to put a fuel pump in this, and then we're going to start it. Thank you, Robin. Let's put a new fuel pump in this. Our fuel pump is getting good power and good ground, but it's not building fuel pressure. So we got to remove the pump, change it, and see what happens. Now, some of you might still ask me about the spark, why we didn't have spark in the coil or spark coming out of the coil. I don't know. Tell me in the comments. To some of you that are Toyota experts out there, let me know. We're going to change the pump first. We're going to crank it. Hopefully it starts. If it doesn't start, then I'm going to figure out why we didn't have spark coming out of the coil. So I'm gonna make an estimate for fuel pump replacement on this one, and then we'll go from there. So cameraman Kyler, thanks for being here. Ian, thanks for your help, buddy.
Thank you for having me again.
We're going to, so this is probably gonna be part 1 of this video. Be on the lookout for part 2. I know the owner of this vehicle is a good friend of mine. I'm sure he's gonna give us the go ahead to do this. We're gonna get a new fuel pump, and then we'll bring you guys back up. If you're not a subscriber, subscribe to our channel. If you have any comments, questions, criticism, leave it in the comment box. If you have a question for cameraman Kyler, let us know. If you have a question for me or criticism, leave it in the comment box. I'll read it. If you don't have something nice to say, don't say anything, because if you say something nasty, I'm probably gonna delete your comment. But you know, I like reading all the comments. So thank you everybody for being here. If you're in the Frederick area or if you're in Maryland, help us find a shop. We're looking for a shop. I mean, we're running out of room here. Our shop is becoming too small. So if you know someone who owns a building that's leasing it or that's selling it, let us know, because we would like to have at least 5 or 6 bays. So right now, you know, the space we have right now is no longer enough. So thanks everybody. See you guys next time.